Welcome to Polishing Marbles. I'm Audrey, and in this podcast, I'll share about my relationship with plasma. This has evolved since my Kundalini awakening and has included one-on-one tutorials from Isis, my run-ins with Arcturian merkabas in my backyard this last August, and also the recent plasma event I just experienced in Chicago. Osho is going to share about how to tell truth from fiction in the media and how you can start working with plasma right now. He also drops some truth bombs about sci-fi and fantasy being nonfiction and how we can observe from a heart-centric space as though perched in a nest instead of playing in the chaos. Remember, there are a lot of opinions going around right now, and one of the most important references will always be yourself. You are your own guru. Look to your heart for your own truth, as love will always illuminate your path. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to me talking. uh, I have put off this particular podcast for a few days because of just chaos in the world. But it's like, it's like nagging at my head, do it now. So I'm going to do it now so that I don't get further attacked by the ethers. Um, this is a pretty exciting podcast for me to share because I'm getting pummeled with so much information right now. And there are reasons for that I'll share in a timely way. But as a little prequel, I'm going to be talking about plasma today. And that word is kind of popping around in the news right now because of these plasmoids that are being seen, as well as drones. And what's interesting is I follow a lot of people who have gifts similar to mine, and I'm listening to what they're channeling, and I really feel like it's good for you to know that there's like this resonance of truth that comes up, like that kind of discernment where it just hits a note properly to your frequency and your timeline or whatever you want to call it, and it just hums when you hear it. And if you don't hear that or feel that, then it's probably not related to your truth. And it's really easy to get pulled in all these directions of like, oh my God, and that is an energy that is not helpful right now. I tend to like the observation point of view. So I was doing a channeling session for someone today, and a lot of involved the imagery around creating a nest. And then afterwards, I was driving home and I ran into like one of the parks I do go on walks in, and it's cold right now. Well, it's not like freezing cold, but it's not like comfortable. There's there's chemtrails all over the sky. It's kind of dreary and gray, and spirits like go for a walk, and I'm like, really? Like I mean, yay trees, but like so I did. I got out of the car. I was not bundled properly. I had no scarf. I go on this walk, and I just get told to look up, and I see all these nests like in big old trees. So these looked, because this is an area that has herons and cranes and stuff. And so I was like, oh, these look like big nests. Like they could be birds of prey nests or maybe even um like a heron or something. And I just kept on getting told this with this imagery of the nest to when you're above it, like I didn't see that the nests were there until I was told to look up. And so vibrationally, if you're high enough, anything that's going on down here is not going to touch you. But it's our jobs to like get high enough so we are no longer part of that realm of chaos. And I feel like that was such a valuable lesson for me, especially right now, and especially before recording this for you. So That in mind, if you are interested in what I have to say about plasma and plasmoids, this is going to be a really interesting perspective that perhaps you've not gotten from somebody else, is my guess, just because it's so oddly specific. Um, but anyway, so with that, I'm going to get started. I have a lovely list of things here that I've created um, to refer to. And so, first of all, I'd say my relationship with plasma. I mean, it's like truly an element. It's earth, air, fire, water, and spirit or plasma or ether. Like it is an actual known aspect of our reality that is well documented. So this is not even just like a woo-woo thing. This is, oh no, plasma's legit. It's just that we're not necessarily taught about it, any of this in school. And what's so funny is anyone that knew me in high school knew that, or I mean, let's just start with high school. In high school, I was not paying attention. Math, science, and history, I would just like go unconscious unintentionally. And I know now, like, it wasn't because I wasn't smart or any of that stuff. It was because I was hearing things that weren't true, basically. And so my brain was going, and like checked out completely. And then in college, it was the same thing with like parts of anatomy and physiology. I just wouldn't integrate into my brain. And certainly math and science were just in general always challenging, but history as well. So anything that's, I think, been distorted, my brain would just not receive. It just wouldn't. It'd be like, go unconscious. Skip class. In high school, I did perpetually skip class. My last year and a half, I'd skip class, go to a coffee shop with my friend Jenny, and we would drink these Italian mochas with like orange juice in them and smoke cigarettes, and it was amazing. I have no regrets. So, my history with plasma is, as I digress with my ADHD brain, which I have now fully accepted, off of Adderall for like 4 months, fully accepted that I am never going to speak in a straight line. Cheers. Um, so plasma in my life, in modern era, in Audrey's middle adult life, I mentioned in my Kundalini Q&A I had last week. It's 2 hours long, and honestly, if you haven't seen it on YouTube yet, I didn't post it on a podcast because it's a teaching event, so there's a lot of visual things. So if you're listening to this, you'll have to pop over to YouTube to watch the full event. I just made it public because I thought everybody needed to see. It tells a story of what Kundalini is, my personal Kundalini story, and also what I'm planning to launch, which I believe is going to be in the new year after the holidays, simply because it's impossible to get it done before then. But I had, in referring to that, the day of my Kundalini awakening, I mentioned that I had gone to visit one of well, my friend's an energy worker. Her name's Suzanne Michelle. She used to work in actual like power, like a company that had power. She's a genius. She worked with power, and then she had her awakening, and she no longer wanted to work with it in that way. She wanted to work with it with us as circuits. And so she is able to manipulate, harness, understand, read energy. And I worked with her for like close to, I think, 3 years on and off, just as much as I needed to see her. And she would always tell me, and it didn't really click. I didn't understand. She's like, Audrey, plasma is everything. Plasma, plasma, plasma is everything. And I'm like, cool. What's plasma? Like I didn't know what to say about that. But I was like, that's amazing that she's so interested in this thing that she's like really passionate about. But she basically said the secret to everything is plasma. So stick that in a pin and put it up here until we come to it later. It was just like a little mustard seed that was planted, plasma important. Okay. And so from there, of course, I have a Kundalini awakening, and then I'm going through this period of initiation where I am learning the truth about everything. the non-distorted truth about everything. I am getting taught by ascended masters. In particular, I'm referring to Isis. There was this period, it was really an interesting period of time because in this initiation, I'm learning about all the laws of the universe in the Kabbalion and the Corpus Hermeticum, and I go on these walks every night. I still go on walks almost every night, and I would receive teachings through channeling from ascended masters in this particular era. Um, it was after my Odin era, and when Isis was coming in heavily about magic. And this was about a year and a half ago, or just like a year and a couple months ago, I'd say, because it was fall, early fall into the winter. And so she was sharing with me basically how substances are harnessed with the elements to really create magic and intentional use of your mind, your will to create a reality through the harnessing of these elements. So she is like the number one magician, is Isis. I would say witchcraft, she had it. And so she was, all my teachers are really neutral when they communicate. And I was going through a period where where are they? The books that are right over here. There's some dark magic books, only because I don't practice dark magic, but I wanted to understand it. Like, if people are harnessing neutral laws to create funky stuff, I want to know how they're doing it. And then I'm going to do something else, because it's so insane to me to just like hide your head from information and be like, oh no, I can't look at it. No, I want to know about it. So this was like an era where I was studying a little bit of Aleister Crowley and um there's like this book over here that is about like bones and blood and that kind of magic. I don't like study. I just kind of skimmed through. I'm like, that'll be a great reference tool if I need it. But in all that, there's a lot of like use of fluids. I'm just gonna say this is gonna be brief. There's a lot of use of fluids. And so I was like, that all seems like creepy and satanic to me. Like not Satan, like Satan is an energy, Lucifer is an energy. They all come from source. So I'm not like judging it. I'm just like, okay, so what's with the fluids? And so Isis, she's like, well, they hold a vibration of whatever work that they were doing in the body. And so she was going through all the like gross fluids or the fluids that are kind of associated with creepy shit, like stuff. And I have really no interest in that. But then she went on. She was just like, because I was in this period of understanding the frequency of things, right? So she's sharing the frequency of these other things with me that I'm like, ooh. And then she's like, so she was talking a little bit about blood, which has a lot of iron in it, which is a frequency that is associated with like iron is associated with Mars, which is associated with war, blah, blah, blah. So she's sharing that with me, and I've always been a little anemic, frankly. So low iron here. But she was like, what is the treasure within a human being? And I was like, are you talking about like creation energy and like the energy that is in a fluid with either a female or a male related to creation energy? And she's like, I'm not talking about that right now. And I was like, okay, cool. I said, all right, what are you talking about? And she's like, what can become anything it needs to become? I was like, are you talking about like stem cells? And she's like, that is really precious as well. What else? And this is the thing with Ascended Master teachers, they never just tell you stuff. This is very much an engaging conversation. And so again, no real history of paying attention in biology or anatomy and physiology. It's a running joke in my family because I took it 3 times in college. One of the times it was because I went through a breakup and I just stopped going to class. To be clear, I like to defend myself. The second time was because I was pregnant and everything made me throw up. And the third time I passed. So really, it's not as bad as it sounds. But so I was like, stem cells, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no, no, what is the gold? What is the gold? What is the gold? And I was like, oh, wait, when they spin those vials of blood, there's like it separates and the top part looks kind of buttery. I'm like, are you talking about that? And she's like, yes, what is that? I think she's so patient because at that point I'm like, what is that? And she's like, what is it that has places all over town for people to sell that part of them? I was like, oh, you mean like the plasma place? And she's like, yes, poor thing. Not poor thing. She's magical and amazing in all the ways, but she's just very, very patient with me. I was like, plasma? That's the gold? And she's like, yes, that's the gold. And I'm like, well, it is the color of gold. Why is it the most precious thing? And she said, well, it is what connects you to source because it's a conductor. It's a conductor of the kundalini energy and the source energy that comes in through your crown to communicate information through your entire body. And I was like, a conductor, so is it made of fat? Like conductor. And she's like, it has fat in it. It conducts. It's conducting all of that energy and that spark that comes from above and you're below that connects you to everything as a circuit. It's like able to communicate. It's like, oh my gosh, it is the gold. And then she gave me this vision of like just basically gold dust in our bodies that are just communicating with each other like little fairies. It's like fairy dust. It's inside. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. And then there's this whole thing with seeing like gold dripping everywhere, and it's magical. It's just really cool to have her as a teacher. So that was like my second uh, contact, I'd say, with plasma conceptually in our physical vessels. And then I would say the next piece is when I got back from Shasta, this last time, my third time to Shasta, where I was at a conference and I had so many of my friends there and it was amazing. And there was a lot of work that I was there to do with the people I was there with, which was basically bringing balance to the masculine and feminine, the old priest and priestesshood holders of the old ways and bringing them back, the masculine and the feminine back into balance, into the singularity. It was a whole thing. It's, it's a whole thing. But did the work. And after like the conference was over, a lot of people went home. My friend Alex and I, we spent time together. We spent a lot of time before and after the conference together on the land, talking to the land, connecting to the land, getting activated. There was just like so much stuff that was coming in. We both did our independent stuff. I was like climbing Black Butte and running into rattlesnakes and going to the redwoods, and she's hiking into caves and getting downloads from vortexes. And we'd come back and we'd share our stories. But while I was in Shasta, I noticed about around the day I went to Black Butte, it was about a day or 2 days before I left to head home. And I started seeing faces and everything. So I started seeing consciousness in stuff. And this is important for later. And what's a super big bummer is that vibrationally, you can get upgraded to something and then you go back to density and then you don't have access to it in the same way or as overtly as you did previously. And of course, people know that going to hot spots like Shasta or really intensively nature-rich spaces are going to hold such a greater vibration than being in a city where I'm at right now. So it's fairly difficult to have that same experience here every day as I was having then, which was so magical. But that was where I would start to be able to interact with things that we would think we can't interact with. I'm talking rocks and trees and bushes and all of that. Um, but aside from that, also, Shasta is a big hub of extraterrestrial activity. A lot of people know that. It's like for the US, we've got Shasta and Sedona and I'd say New Mexico, I believe. Is that where Area 51 is? I'm not sure. I've been to two of those, and so we would go every night. My friend Alex and I, and sometimes Danny, our other friend who went back to Belgium, we would lay on these rocks in Panther Meadows on Shasta, and then we would look at just, it's a big meadow, and on these huge slabs of granite or jasper, we would lay and just see this traffic come in and out. And there was this one night, several nights, actually, a few nights, I'll just say it was a lot of times that there was a whole stream of ships that were coming in and they would like disappear in this like I don't know, we decided it was a wormhole because they would come in at this perfect pace. It was like 5 o'clock traffic, and they would just disappear in this blank space in the sky. And I took out my sky app and I'm like, oh, okay, that's where it is. They came out the other direction that night, and I was like, is the meeting over? Well, we figured out that they were Lyran because separately we had my friend Alex and I, we both had visions of cats, and that's associated with Lyra. Anyway, it was a very, very, very big deal, but I was able to like kind of communicate and with the twinkling of those ships. And my friends were able to do that too. And also Vitor, our friend Vitor, he was doing that as well, continued to do that afterwards. So we were kind of seeing like this consciousness communication with these ships that were different colors. And from this moment on, I was kind of different. Like I was already different. And then I got more different. And so when I came home, I like went like neck deep into an herbalism initiation. But during that initiation, I spent a lot of time alone. My daughter had just moved into her dorm. I was like organizing the house and going through herbalism and all these initiations and some other work. And I went out into my backyard at night to see because I missed Shasta. And so I would look at the sky. And there was one night when I was on one of my walks and I saw a twinkling that looked like movement far away. Like it looked as far away as like a star, but it was twinkling with different colors. And I was like, that can't be like a Christmas light in space. So I am going to share with you what I saw. Now I'm going to just share my screen really quick. So this is what I saw. And you can tell there's just like a lot of colors. It looks to me like a merkaba, which is, a tetrahedron that's both up and down, like it's twirling um into like a spherical shape. All these different colors or frequencies perceptible by my own human eye, right? And then I noticed that there were about a dozen of them. And as I got back from my walk, I went into my backyard and I looked up at the sky and I saw they were in formations around my home. Like not close, but you could definitely see them as you like zoned your eyes in on these images. You could that's my little reel. Um, so as I would zoom in on them, I could see all these different spots I could see were in formations that would move, and they looked to me to be in like a geometric formation. So, but it's a little confusing. So, how we see constellations, I was kind of getting that the constellations are actually just because we see them 2D as we're looking up at them. We just see like it's a little stick drawing or something. But what if those are multi-dimensional images and we're just seeing the bottom points of it? Um, and they make greater things that we can't really see. And you'd think that I was just like super stoked about seeing this and discovering this. And at first I was. At first I was really excited. Like, oh my gosh, because my friend Vitor in Shasta, he caught something like this at Shasta, which is known to be a hub, and Boise's not. And so I was like, cool, I've got like all of these things within eyeshot in my backyard. That's amazing. Well, that is amazing. It's one way to look at it. I shared it with some of my friends. They came over. They saw it too. They took videos. They're like, what the hell? Why are they all around your house? I'm like, I don't know. They're around my house. I don't know what to say. And they were there every single night, except when the spray was so much that you couldn't really see in the sky. But around 11 o'clock to 1:30 a.m., they were always there. And they were in different areas around my house. But the one that was the brightest was like directly in front of my door in my backyard. And I took out my sky app, and this particular thing was right smack dab in the middle of Arcturus, which we know I'm Arcturian. And so I had the most bizarre reaction when I saw that. Oh my God, and I had had experiences like this when like a past life would come in and I'd have to process it, like really deep, deep, intense feelings. Like I had this when I remembered Atlantis and Lemuria, or a Greek incarnation of mine. I had this like flood of knowing, and then I'd like collapse and choke sob or hide in my meditation loft for like a day and try to process it. This was like that, only it was rage toward my toward my galactic ancestors. I was so mad, and I got so irrationally mad that I actually recorded the whole thing on a voice note so I could have record of it, which I will never share with another person. But I was screaming into my phone. Every word that you can't say on a podcast in that aggressive of a succession. I was just screaming, why the fuck did you leave me here? This is some bullshit. This place is trash. I was like screaming. I'm like, people are mean. They hurt each other on purpose. What is this madness? And I was just like stomping around my house and having like a full-blown 2-year-old toddler fit that I got left here. I thought it was some bullshit. I still think it's some bullshit. But I was like, you better come up with something to make my life better, or I want to get the fuck out of here. I was empty threats. They were empty threats. I wasn't actually suicidal, but at the moment I was very mad, and I was like, I don't know what I have to do. I'll just knock myself in the head with a frying pan to just not feel this feeling. And that night, as I was going to bed, I'm like, you best put me in a healing pod and make me feel better by tomorrow, or else. And they did. I just went unconscious for a solid 12 hours. I didn't move at all. I slept that whole time. They were like, oh shit, we got to work on her. So that is kind of my lead up to just plasma. And I say this because it does relate to what is happening in the world right now. But before I get to right now, because I forgot, a very important part, honestly, very important part. I have mentioned in some of my past podcasts that I did 4 trips in a month, which is like my Olympic grid work month. We get to Chicago, which is my 4th trip, and I'm with my daughter, and we're having a blast. Like the trip was grid work, but it was also fun. So we're doing like the American Girl store. We're going to musicals a couple nights in a row. We are trying the Ghirardelli hot chocolates at the Ghirardelli place. We're going to the museums. We're having just a blast. And we're staying in this Airbnb that was above, shockingly, a bar. We didn't know that. And it did have polka music until 4 a.m. one night that was shaking the entire building. But prior to that night, got in my bed. My daughter was in her room, and I'm laying down. I didn't take my typical motherwort that helps me sleep. I didn't need to. I was exhausted, so I was just laying down there. My eyes were open. Something happened. Something happened that I have never experienced before in my life, and I don't know if I ever will again. The air suddenly became thick with a substance that I can only describe as what I have seen when I am in meditation in the void, but with my eyes open. It's kind of this texture, fine hair, like, but it's not solid, but it's not solid. It is a substance that's movable. And I realized at the time, I was like, this is, I'm being visited. Like I knew I was being visited. I didn't see like a being, but the energy itself was in another dimension. Like it was another dimension that was coming into my dimension. Um, and it was blue. It was very Arcturian energy. And my guide, Osho, is a ninth dimensional Arcturian who is connected to, he told me himself, plasma mycelium in the galaxy. So I knew that seeing this was related to my ancestral family. And I did wake up with something in my cheek. It's still here. I can feel it's a big bump under my cheek. And I got one on my knee too. But what happened was, as I was laying there, I had a feeling very similar to my first encounter with Arcturians, where I felt like I was being lifted up, almost like I was being like levitating, but I wasn't. It was just like pulling me up, but my whole body, and I felt very blissful, but I also felt I wanted to engage with it. It was so strange. So I was like doing light codes in the bed laying down. So I'm doing it like this, and it's moving with my hands. Like it felt like it was teaching me how to weave energy. And it was like also a communication. It was like a dance. I felt not like kundalini ecstasy, but I felt very calm and observational, like a full surrender. It felt like when you're going into plant medicine ceremony and you could panic that the medicine is starting to work, or you could fall into it and be like, okay, teach me. This was very conscious. I felt like fall into this. This is very important. This is very special. And so this went on for a solid 45 minutes, I would say, of this textured plasmic essence in my room that filled up what felt to me the whole room, but it could have just been on and in me so that I couldn't see anything outside of it, you know? And this weaving I was doing was continued to happen for that whole time. And then it just like released me and I went to sleep. So that was an experience. And it was I can't say enough how loving it was. Like the frequency was very loving. It was not in any way scary or threatening or oh God. It was just like, oh, okay. Will you take me this time? Because I don't know. I mean, Chicago's fun. I guess I'll stay. Kind of thing, right? So, but I didn't really have words for what had just happened. I remember the next morning I got up, because Charlotte and I were gonna go do some stuff. We were like pick a place to go have breakfast kind of thing. I woke her up and she's so used to hearing my adventures of unique things that have no words. And so I'm just like getting some tea ready and I'm like, so last night in my bed, this like plasma light came and like wrapped itself around me and I was like playing with it with my hands. And she's like, cool. So anyway, and she's not a jerk. She's just like, she doesn't know what to say to this. She's just like, all right, and just trying to watch my show on Netflix while I get ready. Um, but I didn't really let that sink in fully. And I get home because I had done all this travel, and so I've taken in so much information, and I got this amazing breath work with my friend Gina in Chicago, so I was able to start like moving some of that through me. And I just, it's just such a rapid fire of crazy, amazing, mind-blowing stuff that's happening that I'm not even thinking about this thing that happened in that Airbnb as I'm just hitting the ground running, coming back here, catching up on everything, doing all the events that I had planned, dealing with family and all this stuff. And we got back and it was like Thanksgiving the next day. So there was no time to digest. But then as these things start showing up with the drones and with not long after people reporting these orbs or plasmoids in the sky, I'm like, wait a minute. I think I know what's going on here. And what got really weird, I don't want to say maybe it wasn't weird, but around that same time that the plasmoids started showing up and people were seeing them in the drones, and I knew immediately the drones were not extraterrestrial at all. And I had actually seen several of those around when I was looking up at the sky. It was probably after I stopped seeing the beautiful, pretty ones. I was looking up and I saw three of those in a row. I have it on video somewhere. I sent it to my friend Vitor. I was like, look at this. But I could tell from the lights that they were man-made and not extraterrestrial. But they were three in a row, like in a formation. And in Boise, there is actually an Air Force base not far out of Boise itself. And we hear lots and lots of rumblings constantly. And a lot of people on social are talking about the booms in Idaho, and definitely heard those. And there's definitely stuff going on, but you hear a lot of air activity. You don't think a lot of it. These drones do make noise. And so I know, and most people, if they're thinking logically, would know that an extraterrestrial race that has the technology to do interdimensional travel could find a way to do that without making noise. I mean, we have a Prius that can sneak up on you, so obviously they can traverse time and space without making a boom. So you can kind of tell the frequency. And so I'm seeing the orbs, the plasmoids, I'm seeing the drones, and I'm like, okay, Osho, what's going on? So I channel him. And I took a few notes to try to remember. It was a short channel. It was like 15 minutes long, but he was sharing with me, um, he was using the terms as above, so below, which is a Hermetic principle, the law of correspondence, which is everything that's going on here is also going on in the sky and is also going on underground. And so there is basically a battle of good and evil, or light and dark, or however you want to put it, high vibration, low vibration, everywhere. And then he, did I want to share that first? So he was reminding me too that there's trickery. He's like, there's always trickery. And so remember that here in the realm you live in and the one you interact with, there are, say, people who pretend they're one thing and they're not. So those are like wolf in sheep's clothing kind of people. And the Corpus Hermetic and the Emerald Tablets talk about that as like a person who claims to be of the light will be of the dark, and a person of that looks to be of the dark could potentially be of the light. And so things aren't always as they seem. It's all vibration. And so he was sharing with me that that is exactly what's happening up here. And then he shared with me that so the drones are definitely man-made, but the orbs, there's trickery with the orbs, he said, because the orbs have consciousness because they are made of plasma and they are consciousness. They are beings. They're like a different evolutionary expression of soul sparks in those packages. So if they appear as merkabas, that's like a consciousness that is able to travel through time and space in a merkaba. I can do this. Um, and materialize for periods of time in this realm despite our density, which is not an easy thing to do for a high dimensional being. They usually don't want to do that because it's uncomfortable here, and it's uncomfortable here. If you're very high dimensional, it would be very uncomfortable in the third dimension. It'd be like falling from heaven. But they can show up, and they have been. But the trickery, he said, is very important for people to note. Because while there are, like in your world, like light workers, let's just say light workers, because on this realm, in this middle world, we're working with light workers and people who are in opposition to light, basically. There are people that are going to dress up like they're light workers and they're going to confuse people into thinking that they're of the light, and they will lead them into a false narrative of truth that they'll blindly follow. The same is true above, like in the skies. And I wouldn't have ever thought this because I would have been like, orbs good, drones human, or nefarious, or whatever. But he was like, no, pay attention. Pay attention because the consciousness is what you can spark. It's the spark of life. And then he showed me my book that I have unpublished that I do intend on publishing whenever I'm told I can. It discusses how when I was 19 years old and 18, I did some psychedelics because it was the 90s and I was a rave kid, and I also really was like, oh, color is pretty. Um, but there was this time when I worked at a bagel bakery with my best friend, and it was like late at night, we were downtown. The coffee shop we wanted to go to use the bathroom and have coffee. There was an event going on, it was too loud, and we were on psychedelics at the time. And so we were like trying to find a solution. We didn't want to go to a gas station because of fluorescent lights. But we both worked at this bagel shop. We were shift supervisors. We had a key to get in. We weren't going to take anything. We just wanted to use the bathroom. And so we like agreed while we were on psychedelics, we'd go into this bakery and we would use the bathroom. And we did. But I remember this moment where I was like, looking around at the like empty bagel store that I spent so many hours at, serving people their bagels and cleaning and all sorts of stuff. And it was just empty, and it was like clean, but there was no life in it. And when you're on psychedelics, you can kind of tell life versus not life because it's visible. And I was just like, it's dead in here. Like it's dead. And I know now that that's because I was seeing capitalism and what have you, but it is that spark is missing. There's no life, there's no heart, because life comes from heart of creation. That source is love. And so when there's no love there, there's no life. And so Osho was showing me this vision because he speaks through my lens. He's like, here's a reference. You'll understand what I mean. So when he showed me this part of my book, which is funny, he showed me the book and the words, and then he showed me the actual scene of when it happened. I'm like, got it. But he's saying the drones are like that bagel store. They don't have a spark of life. They were man-made for a reason that is not positive, and they will not have consciousness and they will not have life in them. But the plasmoids do have life in them, except for the ones that are being artificially projected. And I was like, seriously? We gotta have artificially projected orbs now? And he's like, this is actually a really great exercise for you to be able, and other people to be able to start discerning and using their discernment for what is true and what is false, which is something that many people have come into contact with other people in their lives. So people who are fake, people who say one thing, they do another, people that betray, people that don't have the soul source spark of love. There is a feeling to that. It's coldness when you're around that. And those orbs that are projected will have that lack of life in them. And they'll look very real, he said. And so, what they're trying to do, and I'm not just trying to be a conspiracy theorist, I'm just telling you what Osho told me, which is that definitely the drones are not of spirit or light or extra dimensional beings. The orbs are, except for some, because these guys are trying to trick so that everything is scary. So they're going to try to get orbs to do things that are scary or confusing. But those are the projected orbs. They're basically like, do you remember? Oh, what is it? Was it in like Clueless when it's not a Prada bag, it's a Prado? Or maybe that was a different like 90s chick flick, but it's going to be off-brand is what he was kind of showing me. It's going to be off-brand. It doesn't have the quality. Doesn't have the spark of consciousness that allows you to interact with it. So he was saying, if you're not sure, extra dimensional beings can telepathically communicate with you and you will hear them and they will hear you. So if you see something and you don't know if it is of light or not, communicate with it and will offer a way to respond to you. And it will do it telepathically or visually. So you can do that. And it will help you understand that feeling in your chest of, is this real? Is this not real? And back to Suzanne Michelle, when I was first working with her and she's like, plasma, plasma, plasma. I had my awakening and I was like, there was this place my brain always kind of went to when I was working with my chakras at the beginning. And I was like trying to understand because sometimes I'd see weird stuff in there that felt kooky and trickstery. And she's like, yes, that is an alternate space that is trying to uh, trick you. So what you do is you take what you're seeing and you duplicate it, and then you look at them both very closely. She says, I do it with the energy of through visualization of orbs. And I'll look at whatever it is I'm trying to discern, I duplicate it and look at it as orbs, and one will feel like love and one won't. And the one that doesn't, you dispose of it, throw it back into source light, and then expand this sphere into your truth that you're going into. And I can't tell you how much that helped me. When I was at the beginning, I was getting tricked all the time. I'd be going into this realm and I'm like, this is amazing. And then something would come in and just like fuck with me because I wasn't like cleared out yet. And so I'd still get attacked a lot. And I'm just like, what's happening? I'm like, oh, and she really helped me with that. So I hope that made sense to you. Um, so it comes down to communicating with the consciousness of love is always available. And Elizabeth April shared this once. I so appreciate this. She simplified it to, if you're engaging with something and you're not sure if it's of light or not, ask it to give you an experience of physiologically feeling unconditional love. And you will get a wave of like a hug, like a little snuggly. And if you say that to something that isn't of light, it can't give you any feeling at all. And especially if you go into a love vibration immediately, it flees. So just for you to be aware of how you can tell what's true and what's not true. And with that, I'm going to actually channel a brief message from Osho about plasma. I feel like that would be a really, really good way to wrap this podcast because this one was really intended to be informative and to give you a sense of personal power as we're being faced with things that we've never seen before, perhaps, and to understand truly at the base of everything that what we've been taught in our lives that we've held on to as a truth, it's going to be so unsettling for some people, but to really just release your attachment to any truth you thought was true before and be open to learning something that is outside of that realm because really once disclosure is fully here, And we're able, like, they're talking about, yes, aliens are real now. But when that comes out, realize what that means. That means that you've been lied to for your entire life. That means there are things they have access to that maybe could have saved your family's life through technology. Uh, they've had access to free energy. So I remember once I paid $400 for my energy bill with baseboard heating at a freaking apartment in 1997. I could barely eat. Just knowing that the free energy has been available this whole time and it's just been kept away, like that really shatters your paradigm. That really upsets you. That creates a revolution of people going, "What the fuck?" And so when you tap into that, there's part of you that's going to be like, I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to. But how many of you have said, this can't be all there is? It can't be just work and die. It can't be work and die. Why do squirrels get to take naps all day and I have to go to work? We're this intelligent species, allegedly, and how am I enslaved to pay a mortgage that I will never be able to pay off at this rate with that interest over all these years, you know? That's insane. And now to know that, yes, it is insane. I'm comforted by that, but for a lot of people, I've had time to digest this for 3 years with my Kundalini awakening. And for others, they have not had that time, and there's going to be a like anger, frustration, defense, all that sort of stuff is going to come up. So for you, just try to go into curiosity, try to perch in that nest up here and be like, okay, I don't know what's happening. This is all crazy. I'm just going to observe. And it'll be better if you just observe, honestly. So I'm going to do a little channel with Osho and see what comes through with him. Pick me some crystals. Use one of these little Shasta Andaras. Isn't it pretty? Okay. Are you ready? Hey, Osho, I'm curious about what you can share regarding plasma with us today that would be of assistance to the collective and regarding what is happening in the collective right now. Please. Ore verikima asisio monetiroitia de kunerotia vafkoro. Yadaridibato. Yandikita ronne veritius. One of the key factors to keep in mind is starting with the concept of plasma. He's saying that he's correcting me, not concept. The actual plasma itself, it's not a concept, it is real. Okay. Working with plasma is actually a gift. He's saying if you have wondered at times in science fiction or fantasy themed storytelling and media, that wizards and priestesses or witches are able to throw balls of light from one space to another space and have outcomes that are notable. Like, so you throw energy and there is a energy hits something and it is like it can be a weapon, it can transmute, it can move, it can transfigure things. He's showing me all different colors of orbs, and he's saying that cool. Those images exist in the consciousness of the creators that created them because they are memories. You think it's a genre. You think it's a genre. It's not a genre. It is a historical piece of nonfiction. These are things that people used to have access to in part because collective understanding allows certain tools to be more accessible to the collective when they are able to understand collectively the belief in something, like everyone believes in dragons, therefore you are able to see something flying in the air and note that that is likely a dragon. When collective consciousness stopped focusing on this element of creation and no longer chose to teach it as something that is part of this fabric of all time and space, the collective belief of it was diminished and it was made science fiction instead of reality. In reality, as the belief and understanding of truth shifts, he's saying it's a very much a collective consciousness. When it's like the spell is broken, he's saying when the spell is broken, he's showing me like at the end of Beauty and the Beast when like the clock and everything turns back into a real person. He's like, when the spell is broken, you will understand that these things have always been part of the reality with which you live, but have not had access to it. And with that breaking of the spell, the vibration and the frequency of the planet exponentially increases, allowing an easier accessibility to it. Whereas right now, oh my God, he's showing me, oh wow, I was supposed to watch, I was told to watch Karate Kid Part 2 last week. I loved the Karate Kids when I was a little girl. I had a huge crush on Ralph Macchio, always had a thing for Italians for some reason. And it is like, of course, the first Karate Kid is the crane technique where he's able to focus his attention, but it's the focused energy that he does with his hands that are going up and out to center himself. And there's this like drum that the centers and everybody's like drumming at the bone temple during the bone dance, and he gets the strength to like focus all of his force into beating a guy he shouldn't have been able to beat. And that's why I was supposed to watch that last week. Thank you. I just thought it was for fun. But it is with the belief in oneself and with the capacity and the tools and the technique with which to manipulate the energy, you yourself are able to work within the plasma realm and create your own force field that you can manipulate and use. And so, as you see things that are in the media or in your personal world that reflect the presence and motion and shape that is flexible of plasma, know that the plasma within that lies within you and your body as well. That plasma is a receptor for the universal plasma, which is of creation, which is a source, which has that spark of light. And when you tap into that source, when you tap into that plasma, you are tapping into that net of all creation and access the wisdom and the tools to be able to use that as a mastery in your own life, not only for personal power harnessing, but also of manifestation. When this is coupled and ignited with your kundalini, you are able then to step into your source potential where you have your free energy source is within you. You become that free energy source. In fact, plasma is here to gift it to you. So as you see the uncertainty, realize that you're being offered an opportunity to upgrade yourself for what was once science fiction and fantasy then becomes reality. Wow, that is so cool because I just kept on seeing Mario in my head. For those of you who played it, where he's like beep 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 with all of his like fire and ice and all these things. He's got these little orbs and I remember too, actually, around the time that Isis was sharing the stuff around plasma, she was showing me how energy worked and how to form it into balls in my hands. And now I'm just like, what? This is all connected to that. I'm like realizing it right now. That is crazy because I've been having this every time I connect to plasma, because plasma's been coming and talking to me and teaching me before, like right before I wake up in that like lucid dreaming space. Every day it comes in and it's teaching me something new. And last night I was communicating with stars and the plasma within stars and the sun. And we're taking in so much light from the plasma emissions from the solar maximum of the sun that we are more plasma is coming into our body, connecting to the plasma that exists in our body. And it's causing a lot of symptoms of like heat I've been comparing it to hot lava in my spine, and it's not everywhere, it's just my spine. And that makes sense because that's what's coming in, and it's like sparking all of the plasma in our blood is getting like a fire under its butt from all the plasma that's coming in. And then we're having plasma around us. And I'm really, as I'm hearing now, is because I was asking telepathically, is that why the orbs are showing up? It's like that's one of the reasons, but that's for a different podcast. Oh, that's right. He was saying they're basically white cells, white blood cells that are like fighting the infection of this planet, basically. That makes sense. And that goes into a deeper thing. Reference Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2, Volume 2. They go into a cell, just so you know. As above, so below. So, thank you, Osho. I do want to say again that what I have coming up for New Year's around Kundalini mentorship and activation is so freaking cool because I personally was like, oh, is it safe to like do this like responsibility wise? Because sometimes Kundalini can like misfire and not work well with somebody. And so I actually got a structure that's kind of perfect to make sure responsibility wise that I feel good. And it's because I was a counselor for 14 years. So I'm like, is that a good practice? Like there's no license for activating people's Kundalini, but I'm like, is that a good practice? I don't want to cause harm. But I was given a structure that is really, really robust, and I'm excited. And that's gonna that's gonna be available pretty soon. I'm really excited for that, given that we're getting so much plasma, and given that the Kundalini helps with that as a circuit. Certainly, it's not a requirement, but if you're ready to like giddy up and go, I'm ready to do it with you. But definitely check out the Q&A. It's 2 hours, 14 minutes long, which I think is cool because that's the date for Valentine's Day, which is a corporate holiday, but it's right next to my birthday. And it's like a little heart energy for the Kundalini recording. But it will tell you everything about Kundalini, my story, and then like what to do from there. And so if that resonates with you, make sure you subscribe on my website so that you'll get the notification when that offering goes live. And until then, remember to like focus on the resonance of the love frequency with what you see as being real or not. And most importantly, no matter what I say or what other people say during chaos, and you're like trying to grasp onto truths and adopt them as your own, remember, 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 please, you're your own guru. You're the one who knows the truth when you feel it. So don't just take my word for it or someone else's word for it. See if it feels true to you, and only then is when it's true. Okay? I'll see you next time. Please like and share this podcast with others you think it would resonate with. The more people that can hear this message, the better, as we are all going through this ascension process together.